watching NotesIn9.
Hello, and welcome to NotesIn9. I'm David Leedy. Episode 206, Building REST Servlets. No rest for the weary. Okay, before we get into the show, and I'm going to date this one, I'm filming this on 5/31/2017. I haven't seen you in a while. I'm trying to get back into the swing of things, and hopefully that'll start soon. Just a couple quick notes before we get into the meat of the show. IBM Connect did happen way back in, I guess it was January, and things did happen at that show, and some good, I guess, and some I don't think are too good, but we'll talk about that probably on another show. But the thing I did want to mention today is IBM Connect is happening again next year, they say, as part of a bigger conference. It's going to be in Vegas. It's going to be part of this big IBM. It's kind of like the Avengers, where they all the different superheroes came together and then they formed the Avengers, or so. That's what this conference is going to be, it sounds like. I believe it's going to be called IBM Build, but don't quote me on that because I haven't been paying a lot of attention to it, quite honestly. But I think it's going to be in Vegas, and it's probably going to be huge. So keep your eye on that. But speaking of huge conferences, one of the best out there is going to be MWLUG. It always is. And that's coming soon. You have to go to the website. It's mwlug.com. I think it's in August. It usually is like a couple weeks before school starts here. It kills me not to have submitted to speak for that, but I did say last year was going to be my swan song there, and I'm going to at least try to stick to that, at least for now. But it's a great conference. It was in Austin last year, which was just fabulous, and now it's going to be like right outside DC, I believe. A good area. I might actually be able to get there since I can drive to it. But I highly recommend you checking it out if you want to learn more about this space. The session, it's well run. The sessions are always good, and it's worth your time. One of the things that did get announced just a couple weeks ago, I think Ed Brill was somewhere, probably at Engage or something, and they did announce a Domino server license is coming. And you'll kind of see that's kind of important in this video that I'm about to show you, this demo or so, because as it stands right now, there is no license for a developer to actually just run a development version of the server locally, which really is an aid to development for some tasks, especially if you're doing library development and stuff like that. So it sounds like in third quarter, if I read the little release or notes correctly, they're going to allow some kind of Domino server license for legally to do development. Not that anyone would ever do it illegally, I'm sure, but even though it's so easy. But again, you should have a legal license to do your development in there, and it is valuable to have handy for testing. The web preview sucks. Let's face it. If you're doing X pages, you can't rely on that web preview. There's no security. You just don't do it. It's horrible. Now, I do not, from everything I've seen so far, which isn't a lot, this is not a community edition server license. Someone posted that somewhere, and I responded quickly that said that was not my read of it. So again, don't get your expectations set too high. This is a license for a developer server, which is a long time coming, quite honestly. But it's here now, or coming, so let's be happy about that. Okay, so that's the news and notes that I know of, and again, I reserve the right to talk about IBM Connect in a future show. Okay, a couple little bits of NotesIn9 news is I'm going to be changing my server. I've been running a server out of my house, and I'm going to take up the offer Prominent.net made to give free hosting to IBM Champions, past or present. So this allows me to get something out of my house and eventually save some costs. So I'm extremely excited about this. I've never really dealt with Prominent at all over all my years, since 2009. Though you hear about them every year at the show, and all you hear is good stuff about them. And Bruce Elgort told me about it. Julian Robichaux told me about them. Other people said talk to Prominent. Roy. A lot of people did. Anyway, so now I'm finally going to do it. So they had this offer that came out, and I'm going to work with them, and I already have. So again, this is the easiest thing I've done so far. Is I sent them a couple emails saying, yeah, I'd like to take advantage, and then Joey sent back said, okay, Dave, let's do this, and here's the information for a new server. I said, well, maybe not a new server. What can I make a replica, because that'd be easier for me to get the stuff over there? And Joey said, sure, Dave, do this. And I said, I'm not an admin here. I only know enough to be dangerous. And he said, just do this anyway, Dave. And I said, okay. And now I've got this server sitting there waiting for me to populate it. So it really has been an extremely easy experience. I think it's been 4 emails, and I'm almost good to go to start copying my stuff over, migrating. Now there's one downside to this, which is not Promnick's fault at all. As a favor to a couple community members, I've hosted some of their demo sites on my Notes9 server. And those won't be coming over, so they're going to just kind of move on and let those go away. So if you see some demo sites kind of disappear, they're old, they haven't updated in a long time, you'll know what that is. But my intention is to get my Notes9 stuff over, especially the X-Pages cheat sheet site, and X-Pages TV, the linking for the indexing for the videos and stuff like that. So that should be coming to a Promnick server near you. And again, I thank them for making this opportunity available to IBM Champions, and I look forward to working with them more. Okay, so today's show is a returning member, a great member, one of my former speaking partners at Lotusphere, the one guy who actually got me to wear this karate headband in front of 300 people, and we did this kung fu fighting little video montage beforehand. But it was a fun session. I don't remember what it was on, but it was good stuff. I think CSS was involved. So Paul Withers is coming back to us, and he's from Intex Systems, and his information's on here. He's a long-time IBM champion. He may be an original member. I can't remember. He's a regular speaker at all the events. He's been on the OpenNTF board for quite a while, and he does a lot of specialization in mentoring X-Page developers. So he is an expert, and he probably knows more about the the JSF lifecycle and X-Pages than anyone who does not work for IBM, and probably even more than some people who do work for IBM. So he's a good guy to listen to. But what he's going to talk about today is kind of like two things. He's going to get into the REST services, and REST is something you do really want to be aware of for integrating with other applications and other front ends like the Angulars of the world and stuff like that. But he's also finally, I've been trying to get this on forever, he's going to talk about setting up a library for library development. And that's something that I've been doing in the day job for a long time, but I never actually got to the point where I set the damn thing up myself, and I wish I had. And I might kind of still come on and do a show to do that, just because I've always wanted to do that. But he's going to take it. He's going to take the first Notes9 shot at it. There are good blogs out there now. Jesse had a great blog series on how to do this. I think there's 1 or 2 others on how to do this. But Paul is going to show us how to do it. Now, I believe Paul is going to still use a Domino server locally for this, and that is no longer, I don't think, necessary for library development, because Sidar came out with something on OpenNTF which allowed you to use the notes jar files or so, and I might be speaking a little out of turn here. I just know that Declan Lynch helped me set up a new instance a little while ago, and we did not need the Domino server, but for the last 4 years we did. So what Paul is going to show you, it does work, though I think there is possibly a streamlined way to do it that does not require you to have the Domino server locally. But if you remember back to the beginning of the show, we have this free license coming, so you have that available to you soon. So anyway, library development is great, and it is a great way to expand your knowledge and get into Java and keep that skill set learning. Okay, with all that garbage being said, let's go to the demo.
Hello, my name's Paul Withers, and today I'm going to be talking about the Oda Starter Servlet. The project has been recently renamed. It was called the OpenNTF Domino API Demo Servlet. It does demonstrate how to use ODA in a REST servlet, but it's really intended as something to get you up and running very quickly. And as a result, I've made some recent changes that will make it even easier to get up and running, and that's what I'm going to be showing today. Now, one of the things that I'm going to be covering is astronomy related. So today you've got an astronomy bonus. Play that when you think that I've mentioned something that is astronomy related, and we'll see if you're correct. So REST services have become very popular over the last few months with Domino, with a number of enhancements that have been included. We've got OpenAPI specifications or Swagger specifications for a lot of Domino REST services, and we're going to be getting more of those REST services through this year. We've also had Smart NSF announced. Now there are a number of options for REST services, everything from the very basic options of DAS, the completely manual approach of agents or X-agents, such as I've used in Xpage's help application, to manually construct JSON strings that then get passed in my case it was a Dojo control for a tree navigation. Through Xpages, there is the REST service control in Xpages. It's not one that I've really used, and as a result, when it came to doing some work with REST services middle of last year, it wasn't one that I chose to use, not because I'm moving away from Xpages, simply because it's not heavily documented, and the custom REST service actually came along after the Xpages extension library book, so it couldn't be covered in there. It has some similarities to Jax-Rs, which I'll be mentioning today with do-get and do-post, but I preferred to go for the more standard approach, and we'll see some examples of why I chose to do that, and so that's why my preference is the REST service plugin. So the project is up on OpenNTF. It's got documentation up on OpenNTF, on OpenNTF's Confluence instance, and as with some of the more recent projects that I've been involved with, things like the Watson Work Services, Java Jdk, I've aimed to try and make it best practice on documentation. The source code is also up on OpenNTF Stash as well. Now, the initial release gave a way of doing it which I've termed here the easy option. Easy as in you could even do it in Domino Designer. You could just download the initial release. You would take the this org.opentf.domino.demo servlet plugin project, import it into Eclipse or Domino Designer. Then you have to do some manual configuration, which is covered here, but you have to get it right. If you make a mistake, then you'll get errors, and I've done that. You can use Eclipse rename functionality with F2, but that will only rename in Java classes. There are also going to be references in XML files that you will need to update. So it's easy in terms of the tool set, but it's less easy in terms of there's a lot of manual configuration that has to be done. There's a feature project that needs to be built, the update site project that needs to be built. You need to handle the deployment of it, and constantly deploy it. So it's easy in terms of not much new learning. It's not easy in terms of the potential for making mistakes, which is why I would recommend an approach that's using newer tools, standard tools outside of Domino development, but it's going to be stepping outside your comfort zone, a bit like Eric McCormick was recommending with his recent NotesIn9. So we're talking about Eclipse. You will have to be using Eclipse here. I don't think this would work in Domino Designer. You'll need to download Java Jdk. It's using Maven, and that means going into something called the pom.xml which handles all of the configuration for what it's downloading, the life cycle that it's going through for build management. And that then leads us into another area of complexity, in that we're building an OSGI plugin. OSGI plugins use the manifest.mf and plugin.xml for their configuration. The manifest.mf says these are the other OSGI plugins that you need to look for at runtime and at compile time. And if you're missing any of those, then you throw an error at that point. But it means that you've got to have them within your environment for development and on your server. The pom.xml and Maven works from a different standpoint. Maven is really designed for pulling down all the dependencies and packaging it up. Similarly, it's kind of the Java equivalent of NPM, which Eric McCormick covered in his NotesIn9, which again pulls down all of the node modules that it needs and packages it all up into a running application. As a result of that conflict between building with pulling content down and building with expecting certain OSGI plugins to be available at runtime, it needs something called Tyco to kind of bridge the gap between the Maven world of building jar files and packaging everything in that jar file, and OSGI plugins of packaging just what you need. So I'm going to work from a blank canvas here, setting up the development environment, and there are some prerequisites that need to be covered. So we'll cover those now. First of all is installing a Java Jdk. So if you search for Java Jdk, let's just get rid of that prompt. Then it takes you to the Oracle website to download the Java Jdk. You get a Java runtime with Domino, but that's not. That's just the runtime. It's not the. It's not the developer kit that you need for it. So that's why you need to download the Java Jdk. Maven requires a version of Java that's above Java 1.6. So I'd recommend downloading the latest Java Jdk, and you just download it, install it, and it installs. So I've got it installed to my program files Java, and there we've got the JDK. If you're running Maven from the command line, then you'll also need to set up an environment variable. So the environment variable itself is going to need to be in the user environment variables. So it's Java_home, and you just point it to that folder that you installed it to. It's a very straightforward. It's just download it, install it, and set that up. The second thing that we're going to be installing, what I would recommend installing, is Maven, and that's the command line functionality. You're going to get Maven with Eclipse to allow you to build within Eclipse. This will allow you to build outside of Eclipse. And again, if you Google Maven, takes you to the website where you can download, install it, and it gives you all the steps for that installation. So again, it's just downloading and in this case unzipping it, which I've done here, and again then on the system variables this time, on the path one, I've added a reference to the bin folder there, which is what it says needs to be added in. So all very straightforward, and again then it's then also installing Git or source tree. So again, download Git, follow the instructions for installing it, go through the I just accepted all the defaults, and it's as simple as that. It's just following those instructions. It's very straightforward. For plugin development, I would also recommend having a local Domino server installed. Now, there may well be licensing issues around that. I would hope that sometime over the next few months we'll actually have a developer license for the Domino server, so you can have that Domino server installed. But OSGI plugin, Domino Designer doesn't have the OSGI runtime installed to actually test those plugins with Domino Designer Local Preview. If you're testing against a server that other people are developing against, it gets inconvenient because you're needing to restart HTTP regularly. You're needing to debug against that server. So really you need a local development server, and that's standard approach for web development from what I've experienced anyway. So finally, there are a couple of other steps for prerequisites. First is installing or downloading the IBM Domino update site for build management. The one that's currently up on OpenNTF as of the beginning of April is for up to and including Fixpack 7. Hopefully the Feature Pack 8 one will be out fairly soon, but it's just a case of downloading it and unzipping it. The folder recommended is C update site, simply because the extension library has some references that expect it to be in that location. You don't have to have it in that location, but it's recommended. And similarly, downloading and extracting the relevant version of ODA. So I've extracted it to update site ODA, and I've downloaded the 3.2.1 release. So then it's a case of installing Eclipse for RCP and RAP developers. So we'll go through those steps now. So we're still in the setup of your development environment, which will be the setup for developing any OSGI plugins. We're not talking about anything that's specific to Maven in what we're going to be doing for most of now up until we start installing the Xpages, the OpenNTF Domino API Starter Servlet. So first off, we're going to install Eclipse. So if you go to the Eclipse website, you can either download a zip file or you can download the installer. So I'm using the installer here, which is what I would recommend, really. It's easier. So first I'm just going to also have to update it, because the version that of the installer that I downloaded was for an older version, so it gives me the option to update it, and it'll now restart. And so we're going to go for the Eclipse for RCP and RAP developers. Now, in case you're playing your astronomy bonus, thinking that I'm going to go for Mars, nope, I'm going for Neon. The releases are named alphabetically, so we've got Mars, Neon, Oxygen is version that's coming out later this year. I think it's June the 24th. It's around that time each year. So the one after that for 2018 will begin with P. I'm not sure if they've chosen a name yet, but just suggesting Paul begins with P. Just a thought. So we need a Java JVM, so we'll point it to, and this is pointing to the JRE. So we'll point it to the 1.8 JRE, and then we need a folder to extract it to. So I've already set up a folder, Eclipse Domino, because you can have multiple versions of Eclipse installed on the same PC. So we'll just kick off that install, and as you'll see, with a decent connection, it's pretty quick on setting all of that up. There are a number of flavors of Eclipse. The various installs will come with certain packages, certain plugins also packaged up. It's then asking for a workspace. Now, my preference with this is not to put it in that location, because I tend to have lots of different versions of Eclipse, each with their own workspace. I tend to put it in a folder relative to the installation, and I'll use that all the time now, so we'll just select that as the default. So Eclipse starts up. Don't want the welcome screen anymore. And next we need to install the Xpages SDK. In Domino Designer, it's File, Application, Install. In Basic Eclipse, it's Help, Install New Software. And I've got that installed locally. So here's the extracted update site. Select it, next, next, accept the license and finish. And restart Eclipse. So that has basically done the first part of setting up. That's basically set up our development environment. Now we need to go on and do the configuration of it. So we're talking about going through our preferences here. So we've now got the Xpages SDK on there. Let's just make this window a little bit bigger. So I've got notes on this PC. C, program files, IBM, notes, and first thing we need to point to is the NotesIn9, then to the notes folder and the data folder. And we want to automatically create a JRE for them. Similarly, I've got a development server on here, so again that's installed at the default location. to the Domino folder and the Domino data folder, and again automatically create JRE. So now we need to tell Eclipse where to find all the code that it needs to compile, and there are two places. There are the basic jar files that come with Domino, and then there are the Osgi plugins, things like the extension library and other plugins that come installed with the Domino server. So the jar files are on the installed JREs. So we just select the relevant JRE. So this is where we've got things like the notes jar. The notes jar isn't available as an Osgi plugin on the Domino server, simply because it's not needed as an Osgi plugin. It's needed for the core server for Java plugins for Java code that's running on the server in agents and those kind of things. So it needs to be in there as a jar file. So that's basically configured it to pick up all those jar files there, and we'll apply that. Next, to pick up the Osgi plugins, and again there's a template that makes that easy for us. So that's pointing to some folders. So we've got in the Osgi folder, we've got the RCP target, so that's RCP Eclipse plugins, and it's loading all of these in for compiling against, and also shared Eclipse plugins, all of these ones. There's also this data applications one. This is for if you want to physically put files on the server, then so you don't want to use an update site database. The recommended place that you would do it is in Workspace Applications Eclipse Plugins. If you wanted to do that, you don't need to compile against the ODA demo servlet. I think you might do if you wanted to use something like an HTTP service. Then you would put them in here, and I'd recommend taking a backup of that, simply because as you install new versions, it may overwrite that folder. So if you've got the backup, then it's easy to just push them back in. So that's got all of those. Because I'm with Feature Pack 8, I've got the latest extension library. ODA Demo Servlet doesn't actually require that anyway, but it will need ODA itself. So we installed that update site in C update site ODA. So we just point it to that and finish. If you want to depend upon a newer version of the extension library, or you use some code that uses the extension library, then you could point to that C update site folder as well. But we don't need to for this. So we finish, make sure we tick it. So now on our JRE, we're using the Domino jar files. On our plugin, on our target platform, we're using the Domino Osgi files, so we're getting everything that we need. The one other change that we'll need to do is on compiler, errors and warnings. The notes jar itself is a restricted API. It'll throw this forbidden reference error, so we'll just downgrade that to a warning. And that set up your development environment for any Osgi plugin development. Finally, because we're using Maven, we're going to need to update some settings for that. For Maven, it's going to be installing the files on. It's going to be installing a local repository at C, at the users directory, and m.m2. That doesn't exist yet, so we'll just let it create that at this point. The way we're going to let it create it is to import a Maven project. We're going to need to do that anyway, because from ODA we need to install this Maven Archetype. So this is where we're going to get started with the Oda Starter Servlet. The Maven Archetype is basically a template which we install, and then we'll be able to create a new project, go through a wizard, and have everything configured, ready to build it and deploy it very, very quickly. So let's create that Maven Archetype. So you would download the Maven Archetype project here, extract it, and then import it into Domino, into Eclipse. Sorry. So it's a Maven project, so we import an existing Maven project. I'm going to point to my source code for it, which is in my Git repositories. Oda Demo Servlet, and it's looking for a pom.xml. Same as a normal project would be looking for a plugin.xml, a normal OSGI plugin. This is looking for the pom.xml. So we finish that. It imports it, builds the workspace, and at this point it's created that M2 folder. So we will also then run as if your default JDK isn't is Java 6, then you'll need to choose build run as Maven build ... That's because Maven, if you're running with a version that's 1.6 or lower, will throw this error. The key things being that bad major version and offset equals 6. So we do a Maven install, which is basically download all the code and package it up, and you would choose this alternate JRE and pick a JRE that's above 1.6 and run, and this goes through the console, downloads load of code. So this is downloading a lot of stuff that is required for packaging everything up, and the thing that you're looking for, as ever, is that build success. So this is now downloaded and installed that template, so we don't need that anymore. It gives us a warning that the resources are out of sync because it's done a build. Doesn't matter because we're removing it at this point, so we'll just continue. What we will need to do at this point is update our user settings. Now that's looking for the default location of in here. We've got the archetype.catalog now, which is has now installed that ODA demo servlets version 2.0.0. I updated the version number for this, but it hasn't got our user settings. So here's one I created earlier. So that's not going to pick it up yet because it's kind of cached that as it brought up the preferences. So we'll just bring the preferences up again, and it now allows me to open that file. So there are a couple of important points here. The first is telling it that this is the local repository to use. I think that's needed for the command line. We'll see later if that works. Then we've got a profiles area. So in our profile, we're giving it some properties. So notes-platform property means the C update site location. Notes-platform-ODA means update site ODA. We're then also giving it a list of some repositories. So the notes-platform one, which is basically all of the OSGI plugins that are on the Domino server. We're telling it to find as a P2 repository, and just giving it an ID of notes. So that's basically, it's not just the OSGI plugins, it's also all of those jar files packaged up as OSGI plugins, because Tycho is going to need these. Tycho is going to need those jar files as OSGI plugins, so that's why we need that build management update site, because we can't just point it to those OSGI plugins that are on the Domino server. It needs the jar files as well. It needs everything from the installed JRE and from the target platform, all as OSGI plugins, and that's what that build management site for that IBM update site for build management gives you. ODA, all the files are OSGI plugins, so we're just pointing to the extracted files for that, and we're pointing it also to OpenNTF's Artifactory, which has the ODA files as jar files as well. I'm not sure if we'd need that for this, but it gets used for some other stuff that I do development with, so I'm including that there as well. So that needs to be in your settings.xml, and that's all documented in here on the setting up Maven development area. So that's basically done our install of the Maven Archetype, configuring for Maven. We're now ready to create and deploy a REST plugin. So there's been a lot up until now, and a lot that would be required for any plugin development. So it's allowing you to develop extension libraries, debug the extension library code. It's allowing you to do all sorts of things at this point. Hopefully you're going to be impressed with just how easy it is to get up and running with a brand new REST servlet with what we're about to see. So, File, New, Other, and Maven Project. And we'll use our default location here, and we've now got this ODA demo servlet, this parent archetype. So we just select that, And now, instead of all that manual configuration, all we have to do is fill in the wizard. So com.paulwithers.demo servlet. The artifact ID is the artifact ID for the top level. So that's this parent level. So I'd recommend just going with parent for that. Now the version you need to change. Versioning in Osgi Plugins is done with .qualifier on the end of the version number, and that's what adds the timestamp onto all of those jar files. Maven doesn't, the pom.xml doesn't have the Maven project itself could be multiple jar files. It could be packaged up as an Osgi plugin. It could be packaged up as all sorts of things, and therefore they use this -snapshot on the end. -snapshot in an Osgi plugin will cause it to throw an error. So we need to remove that -snapshot bit. I couldn't find a way to strip that off in the archetype. If anyone can, I couldn't find a way to default it to something like 0.5.0 either. So if anyone can, by all means get involved in the project. The only package that has any Java code in it, the only project in this, the only module in all of this project is the plugin. The parent doesn't have any Java code, the feature doesn't have any Java code, the update site doesn't have any Java code, only the plugin. So when it's defaulting those package to adding the artifact ID, we don't need that. So we'll just strip that off. The context root is in the URL. It's the bit that comes after the server name. So think of it like your database path. So I'll call it demo servlet. The URL pattern, a plugin can have various servlets in it. This only has one, just for REST. It has to end in /**. You could remove that. Because it's a REST service, I tend to just go with /rest /**. If there were different versions, then you might go with v1, v2, all of those various options. But I'll just leave it with /rest /**, and the ODA version that I'm going with is 3.2.1. So once we've configured all of that in the wizard with properties, which are documented in the help, finish. And this is imported all of those projects. It's creating that parent archetype, and it's going to build it. We're going to start seeing errors here. Don't panic. They're just because it's Eclipse. This is a new Eclipse install, so it's missing all of these Tycho plugins. It knows it's missing them. It's gone and it knows where to find them. So it's saying, do you want me to install them? Well, hell yeah. Finish. And because it's installing plugins, it's going to go through all of the various steps that it did, like when we installed the Xpages SDK. So it's just a case of clicking through the wizard, accepting the license, clicking OK because it's unsigned content, restarting Eclipse, and so you're going to have to do that the first time. After that, it's already going to have all of those plugins. So it's now updating the projects, it's going to build the workspace, and we're going to see these crosses disappear. So that set up the project. Now we've got the update site here. So the site.xml is pointing to the feature the feature points to the plugin, and the plugin has the REST service with the the plugin.xml with the demo servlet context route for it. It's using the web application extension point. That's then pointing to the web content folder for the web.xml. The web.xml has the servlet, and the servlet mapping for that servlet name is /rest/, and that servlet has an init param to start up a Jax-Rs application at this location, Hello World application. That Hello World application is a REST servlet, a REST service. So that's using com.ibm.domino.das.service.rest service. It's using code in the extension library for DAS, and that is an Apache Wink application. Apache Wink is what the IBM code uses for Jax-Rs applications. Outside of IBM, a lot of projects that you'll see will be talking about using Jersey. Some may be talking about other things as well. I can't remember what the other option that people use instead of Jersey is, but Wink is what comes with the Domino server. So that's adding our Hello World resource class, which is this one here, and this is adding a path /hello world, and it's adding various Jax-Rs, standard Jax-Rs endpoints. Any code, if we go back to the web.xml, is going through the servlet class ODA data servlet. This is what adds in the ODA stuff. It starts the ODA thread, adds the current session in to the session factory, and it also adds some cause headers as well, just for better practice. So it's basically built us a whole starter REST service with some demo REST servlets, REST service endpoints that we'll walk through as we deploy it. So to actually package it all up, you'll see that there isn't a plugins or features folder here. There's just the site.xml. If we run as Maven build, do it as a Maven Install with our JRE 1.8. If you're running feature pack 8, you can just leave it with the Xpages Domino JRE, and it runs through. It downloads a lot of the Tyco zips that it needs, and jars and POMs. It's added the repositories. Wasn't quite quick enough there. It's downloading loads of jars here, and it's running through the whole life cycle, and we've got our build success. Now if we look at the code and refresh that target folder, you'll see in the site we've now got our site.xml plugins and features, which means that we can install that into Notes. let's install that into our update site. And here's one that I had earlier. It's just kicking off a replication at the moment. So once that opens up, yes, that's just failing because my Domino server's not running. So just start the Domino server, so I'll install it into this update site database. I have a number of update site databases here, just to be able to separate them out. So now we've got that in our Eclipse Domino workspace. We've got the site folder, so we'll select that site.xml, import it, and we've got our demo servlet there, which if we look on the project, it's that com.pullwithers.demo servlet. So with filling in the configuration, right clicking, run as Maven build, and installing it, we've got a starter servlet up and running. That easy. If we do REST HTTP, then that will load those plugins. Now, in terms of testing that, there's a nice Chrome app called Postman. So once you've got Chrome, if you Google for Postman, then it gives you the links to actually install it. And I've got it installed, and I've got a link here, so we'll just start up Postman. Our context root was my demo servlet. In the web.xml, the URL pattern was REST, and in the resource, the path for everything in this class was /hello world. We've got a GET request here without an additional path. So if we test that, we shouldn't get that. Let's just check it's loaded everything correctly. Tell HTTP osgi diacom.pullwithers.demo servlet. Yep, that's working fine. Let's just double check those settings. So, our context root here was just demo servlet. I changed it from the last ones. And we've got a response. Now, let's just walk through the demos that I've got here, because I think as I walk through these, you'll see why I prefer a custom REST servlet over something like the extension library components. So the first one is, it's ODA, so I've got native session as well as the current, but it's still Domino. So context.getUserDatabase will get whether this contextinfo.getUserDatabase will identify whether this REST servlet is running in the context of a database or not. At the moment it's not. If I put /names.nsf/demo servlet, it's now running in the context of names.nsf. So you can ensure that plugins either only run in the context of a specific database or don't run in the context of a database. For building up the content, we're using a JSON Java object, which is in an IBM package of JSON code. The JSON Java object is equivalent to a Java map. Think of it like session scope or request scope, those kind of scoped maps. So that uses .put and .get. So it has a key and a value. There's also JSON Java array, which is like a Java list. So it's very easy to build up your JSON code, your JSON content. You're not doing any manual configuration of strings in order to get the response. We've also got, because it's core Jax-Rs, we've got a Jax-Rs response builder. So we can say response.ok, and with the content assist we see there's various other ones like no content, not acceptable for whatever reason, and server error and various statuses. Then we pass in our JSON Java objects to string. That to string method converts it to from a map to a string, and we tell it media type.json, application JSON. So we've got the Jax-Rs media type options, and then we just called builder.build to convert that response builder to a response. So there's a lot of helper stuff that makes a lot of this very easy. And some of that is Jax-Rs, standard Jax-Rs. Some of it is IBM stuff. We've also got the Jax-Rs web application with a throwable that we pass in and a status. So again, Jax-Rs status.internal server error. So this will give an error 500. So we can handle all of that very easily. Let's look at the must be authenticated one. So that's got a path. Again, Jax-Rs, standard Jax-Rs. It's a get of path / restricted. Gives us an error code 403, forbidden. You're not authorized to access this endpoint. That's using this web application exception, and it's then using a DAS utility of error helper, create error response, that then takes a message to pass back in the message area, and what error code it is. So status.forbidden, that's converting both the code and the text of that code. So there's a lot there that makes things very easy for you, and it's easy with session.getEffective_username if it's anonymous to check for anonymous access. There's also an example here of posting data. So here it's got a custom parameter, a custom URL that we're passing in. So that's converting whatever is in the path as a path param. It's passing it in as this string variable message, and it's getting us the JSON body because it's consuming application.json. It's getting the body in there. So test one. If we add in a header of content type, I think it is content type application.json, and now oh yes, before I can get access to the body, I need to change it to a post. So now in our raw, we'll create a JSON object. So JSON1 colon test1 JSON2 test2. So I'll just go back to the header tab so that we can see the body fully there. So what we're doing is we're outputting that param as param message, outputting the whole body as JSON object as string, and iterating through that. I'll come back to it in a moment, and outputting each element of it. And that's what we get here. So how are we managing, how are we extracting that JSON string as how are we converting it to a map? Well, we're using the JSON parser, which is again com.ibm.commons.util.io.json. It's an IBM JSON parser to convert from JSON. There's also ones for Is Jason. I think we use the JSON Java object, so we don't need to do to JSON. And it's then using JSON Java Factory.instance, which is a standard IBM then JSON Java Factory to convert all of that to check whether things are numbers, to get numbers, get booleans, those kind of things, to actually convert all of those. You could use something like Jax-Rs to convert JSON directly to a Java object. There's a lot of options here because we're moving now into standard Jax-Rs. So there's a lot of options there. So that shows, hopefully you're impressed with how quick and easy it was to set up a new plugin, configure it, build it, deploy it. Let's make that testing process even easier, because what we don't want to have to do is every time we make any change, run the Maven install, import it into here, restart HTTP. We can make it easier than that. So first of all, just to make sure that we're not we can't be picking that up again, I'll just remove that from there. And we use a debug configuration. And we want an OSGI framework debug configuration. So we'll call it local server. Again, this comes with Xpage's SDK. So Domino OSGI framework, we need to set default auto start to false, and then we don't need any of these target platform jar files, OSGI plugins rather, because we've already got those on the server, so we don't need to include those. So we just apply and debug, and it picks up where the Domino server is, and we just need to OK on that. For some reason now this is saying that there are some problems with those. I'm not quite sure why. It hasn't done on my old PC, but it's created a file called a PDE configuration in Program Files, IBM, Domino, data Domino workspace. It's created this PDE launch.ini, which is pointing to this configuration that we've just set up. It's stored in our local workspace in org.eclipse.pde.core, and that config is basically telling it which plugins to load. Now, all we need to do is rest http, and we'll see it picking up. We'll have a message soon about there it was. Come on. That it's using PDE configuration and where it's located. So it's now using that. If we add any new plugins in here, so if we added in another plugin, another REST plugin, REST service built upon Oda Starter Servlet, then all we need to do is just go back into that debug configuration, and it will have ticked it automatically because we've told it to add new workspace bundles to that configuration automatically. But in order for Domino to pick up that new one, we just need to click debug again and restart HTTP. So now, as we're developing, if we want to add in a new REST service, test this, public response do test. So it doesn't matter what we call our Java method, it's this path which is how we're going to be referencing it externally. So we'll create a JSON Java object, JJO equals new JSON Java object, JJO dot put test1 hello world. Return response dot OK, JJO dot toString media type dot application JSON dot build, and all I'm doing is copying it from the example that I've already given you up here. So save that. Now all we need to do, we don't need to build, I've got build automatically switched on here. I don't do that in Domino Designer because you've got the NSF talking to the OnDis project, you've got source control talking to the OnDis project, you've got the NSF getting updated from replication all over the place. It's a minefield. Here we've only got local development. These files are locally on my PC. The only thing talking to these would be my local source tree. So there isn't that kind of conflict. So build automatically is fine for this kind of development. So it's already built this plugin project. I don't need to rebuild the whole thing because it's only this plugin project which the Domino server is running. So if I restart task HTTP, it's now picking up the changes that I've just made there. So I've called it test this, and it's a get. We don't need that header. Let's just get rid of that. And now if we test that request, we've got it there. It's as easy as that to set up a new REST service endpoint. If you add in a new Java class, you just need to add it in the get classes area. If you want it to be one instance of the class that's used by everyone, a kind of application scope as it were, but at a server level, so kind of server scope, then you would add it as a singleton, but most of the time I would just use it as a class in there. If you want to rename that Hello World application, you just need to remember to update the reference here in the web.xml. But other than that, it's as easy as that. Debugging, you can just click on the debug point and set up a debug configuration. It's a remote Java application. I'm not sure if I've got everything configured on my local server yet. I should have. So we'll just try that. Yep, we've got the tick there. So now when I run that test again, it clicks across to the debug perspective and I can debug it. So you've got the full debugging there. So we'll just click that through and disconnect. Now, finally, we'll just cover command line. Actually, let's use Commander. So if I go to my testbeds folder, yep, so we've got a couple in here. So the first thing that you would do if you hadn't installed the Maven Archetype there is actually go to download the source code and go to the Maven Archetype folder and do mvn install. So that's basically what we did by importing it into Eclipse, right-clicking and running Maven Install on it. That's installing the archetype. So now let's go to that testbeds folder. We'll create a test2 folder. And now if the actual code for that is on the documentation here. If you've done this a few times, then I'm sure it will become muscle memory. But we're generating Maven Archetype and telling it to use the local archetype catalog. Now, hopefully, if I've got that all set up correctly, it knows where to look now. It didn't do when I tried this before. No, it's saying no archetype defined. There must be something else that I need to do in order to for it to know where my local repository is. So there's something that I've missed there in my configuration. But if you're used to using Maven from the command line, then you'll probably already have that set up. So that's the whole of the demo that I wanted to show. The most important bit really there was how easy it is to set up a new REST service plugin. There was a lot of configuration up front, an install that had to be done, but it's tools that will be standard beyond Domino Designer and standard for a lot of development. So although a lot of that may seem a bit scary, it's getting you into it's building skills that are reusable going forwards. I did mention the astronomy bonus at the start. There were a couple of red herrings in there. Let's see if you did actually use the astronomy bonus at the right point, because it was, yes, when I was in Notes. Notes is based upon Eclipse 3.4, which is whose codename was Ganymede. Ganymede, of course, being the largest moon of Jupiter. Yes, that was where our astronomy bonus was. So thank you for listening today, and hopefully I'll have another NotesIn9 soon. Thanks.
And that's the demo. I thank Paul for coming on the show, and especially for doing this particular show, because I've been wanting it on for a long time. Sorry for the delay in that. I've had some technical difficulties, but hopefully those are over now. And if you have any questions for me, here's my contact information, and I thank you for your time.